Good evening, Graham. Good evening,
Hello,
Anthony.
Charles.
Welcome on what could be a nervous evening of Brazilian going nuts or Scotland getting a
No,
nil-nil.
it's not nervous. Scotland have no track record of beating Brazil,
But
especially
10
not with
fixtures,
a
never
team
beaten them.
that couldn't beat Morocco.
No, no. But we'll
So
see.
it would be a miracle if Scotland got a result against Brazil. Simple as that.
Miracles happen, Graham.
Well, they do, but we beat Denmark 4-2 with three amazing goals to qualify.
Yeah.
That was a miracle in
And
itself. So
yeah, you've
they
used
may
up
be
your
asking
goals.
too much to have two miracles.
You've
Hmm,
used up your goals. That's the reality. Now,
I think so.
introduce yourself, Graham. Apart from being Scotland fan, who are you? Who are you?
I'm a very I'm a very hot Graham Chalmers from the Harrogate Advertiser. Charm gigs, Charm magazine, Charm website, Charm events,
Charmer.
etc., etc., etc.
Put the charm in Charmouth. That's you. I'm Charles Hutchinson. I think, probably even hotter than Graham, and I'm not talking about looks.
It's
But
so hot, Charles, that one of my bananas liquefied.
liquefied banana. So it didn't
Mm.
just split. That's
No,
extraordinary.
no, it just turned into mush.
I think it's overrated, hot weather. I really do. We could have a heated
Yeah,
debate.
completely.
I mean,
Mm.
it's just demoralising. It is because it's only
This
going to get
hot
hotter.
weather,
And
then
what's
there's
the point?
yeah, well, 20,
Scotland's always got
yeah.
its weather right for years and years. Dreek, damp, miserable. That's what suits the British temperament, not this damn stuff.
Yeah, but 25 degrees is hot enough. That's a hot day. You don't
Mm.
need 30,
You don't need
35.
40.
Yeah.
Madness.
Anyway, now
Anyway,
that we've
Graham,
whinged about the weather, let's
talking
move
of
on.
sunny, let's talk of sunny music.
Mm.
Sunshine, the very essence of sunshine, the Lemon Twigs.
Oh, yeah.
Who you are putting the idea forward that they may work better as an idea rather than as a band. Uh, I think they're one of the most joyous sounds around at the moment, but they're never quite there. It's really close. It's tantalizing, but it's never quite gets over the line, I think.
Yeah, well, I've been going through a phase of buying new albums that aren't by old timers. So I got like the Gorillaz and Boards of Canada. I'm going to get the new Yard Act album, obviously. And I got Lemon Twigs Look for Your Mind, which I think is the
Mm,
fourth Lemon Twigs album I bought. So I do
mm,
want to like them. And
mm,
they're an American duo from Long Island, as you know, brothers Brian and Michael
mm.
Daddario. And they're sort of geeky looking, a bit preppy. They
Yeah.
look and dress like twins, even though they're not twins. And
Mm,
they've got long sculpted fringes and hair past the ears.
yeah.
I think the Americans would call it bangs. They look like that American garage band The Seeds from about 1966.
Yes.
And the first album was in 4AD called Do Hollywood, which came out 10 years ago. They
Mm,
were only 17 and 18, and they
mm.
were writing joyous, upbeat, guitar-based pop songs with little hints of 70s Wings and Todd Rundgren. And everybody thought they were amazing. And I thought, yeah, good band, especially since they're so young. But then each album that you got by them, you start to think, well, where's the classic songs? Because if you're going to be a guitar pop band, essentially, which is what they are, vaguely, even though they did a concept album about a gorilla. I think the gorilla thought he was a human. Go to school. It was a musical about a chimpanzee raises a human boy. Well,
Mm.
it was still a guitar pop album, but where are the songs that stick in your brain? Even Paul McCartney's new album, uh, The Boys of Dungeon Lane, there's like four or five songs that pop back in your head. You can't help it.
Mm.
The Lemon Twigs never do that. They just don't write songs that are melodically memorable. It's almost like they're writing for a West End or a Broadway musical, where most of the songs fit a purpose before they've even written them. And there's no elements of like spontaneous, you know, pop moments. Like if you listen to Hello Goodbye by the Beatles, it's a really simple little song, which is sculpted in amazing ways with amazing twists and turns, with a big sort of like clattering drum-based Hawaiian ending. Well, Lemon Twigs never do that stuff, unexpected stuff. When a Lemon Twigs song starts, you know exactly where it's going and where it's going to end up. So they
So,
sound like the great pop, but
mm.
are they really great pop? I really don't know.
I think they fall short of it, Graham. The fact is they're twigs and they'll never branch out to being something more than that. And I don't mean that in a punning way. I
Mm,
think they, as I say, they're just short of what they
mm.
need. You've got to have,
I
if
think,
you're going to write
yeah,
in this style, you've got to be producing pop bangers. You've got to be capable in the way that Ramones were, the way that Jesus and Mary Chain were, of writing songs that hook. It's the most difficult art of all, is the hook. Not just in
yeah,
fishing, not just in fishing, but in music. And they do
yeah.
tantalizingly, they end up in fishing terms, they can cast that fly, but you don't get the salmon on the end of it.
Well, once they've caught the hook, they don't just repeat the hook like a good pop song will do.
Mm.
They chuck in more stuff. There's
Mm.
almost too much going on. They go in straight lines, but quite busy straight lines. They never pare it back to the bones of what makes it so good. I think if there was ever going to be a biopic about the Searchers or the Hollies, or maybe even the Beach Boys, well, there's been biopics about the Beach Boys, really.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think Lemon Twigs, the two brothers, would be shoo-ins to play those bands.
Mhm.
And I also think there's something almost fictitious about them. The way they
Yeah.
look, the way they talk, the way they write songs. They're almost like characters from that Wes Anderson film, They're All Tenenbaums. It's almost like they've been made up, like they're not actually real people. They're completely Wes Anderson and everything about them.
Can I give you three recommendations
All right.
that I think will be more fulfilling for you?
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, one of my albums of the year,
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Morby. Do you know Kevin
Oh yeah,
Morby?
I've heard of him. Yeah, yeah.
Little Wide Open, just absolutely beautiful album where, by contrast with Lemon Twigs doing too much, he judges
Mm.
perfectly how little to use. But he has
Yeah.
gifts, melody. And this latest album, Little Wide Open, including a gorgeous title track, thoroughly recommended. Number two, Death
Mm.
Cab for Cutie's new album. This is the
Yeah, yeah.
divorce
Well,
album.
like them.
I
Yeah.
Built You a Tower. And he is coruscating about the relationship, but also I think he's honest about his own failings within it. The only sound that they regularly have is the sound of slamming doors, which is, I think, an amazing image for when a marriage is going wrong. The sound of slamming
Mm.
doors perfectly sums it up. So that's recommended, and so it was interesting to see where he goes next. I'm hoping that something somewhere improves for him, because clearly that's a pretty miserable album. And the third of the choices, recent
Yeah.
gems, is Kurt Weill's new album.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mm.
Kurt Weill's
Mm.
new album, whose
Yeah,
name
he's a talented guy. He writes some good songs. He's a
certainly
bit too
is.
slacker for me, and a
What's
bit
wrong with being
too.
slacker, Graham? Because I think, again, whereas
Mm.
Lemon Twigs overplay it, I think he gets it
He
absolutely.
underplays it.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite album of his actually is the one he made with Courtney Barnett. But
You like that one? Sea Lice, what it was called. Yeah.
I would absolutely recommend it. I'm just trying to find. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was glorious, that album. So they are my three current
He's
recommendations.
definitely talented, and
That's
and I
yours.
like individual songs. He is a good songwriter.
It
Yeah.
is called
Yeah.
Philadelphia's Been Good to Me, and
Yeah. I've heard the
Chance
yeah,
to Bleed. Have you heard Chance to
yeah.
Bleed?
Chance to Bleed's very good. It's very catchy.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I think, disappointingly, because I did get this new album by the Lemon Twigs, hoping for, because it had such good reviews. I thought, well, let's look this one up. But I'm giving you three recommendations, or listeners' recommendations, other than Lemon Twigs right now to go for.
Well,
So,
I think the Lemon Twigs, though, they have got the potential to do a great album and great songs. It's almost like they need to get someone who's more powerful than them that they respect to
yeah.
like marshal the resources and edit them and push them into doing a great album because I think they could. They just
Do
haven't.
they need that? Do they need that chap from the National who seems to end up producing an awful lot of albums for American acts? His name
Yeah,
Desna? Something Anton
that's
Desna?
right. Yeah, he did Taylor Swift for a few albums.
Yeah, one of the Desna brothers. Maybe go with
Yeah,
ironically, but maybe he did
he's a
actually
bit too
do
smooth.
that one.
He's a bit too. He goes by mood and feel. What
He
they need is
does.
someone that's going to take them out of their comfort zone, not someone who's going to put them in a straight line again.
So in the old days, you'd be needing him to work with. Let's think. I think he's dead, possibly.
They would have got. I think Trevor Horn. I think Trevor Horn might do
Now
them a
that
favor.
now that now okay. So I was going to go with the guy that worked with on a wedding present on Bizarro, Steve Albini.
Steve Albini.
I've gone
Yeah.
off. Is he around still? I don't want to. Can't remember
No,
who's.
no,
Is he
he Albini sadly died, and he tends to make
right?
bands sound a bit grungy. So maybe that would help them because they
So
lack an
that's,
edge
but
to
it's
those
too
lemon
late because
twigs.
that's beyond the grave.
They're like a chest that's been shaved of hair. That's what lemon twigs sound like. They need a little bit of rough edges. So maybe Albini would have done the job.
So unfortunately, it can't happen. But that was the guy that I was reaching for,
Mm-mm.
Albini, who worked with the
From
wedding present.
beyond the grave.
Yeah. So Graham, Lemon Twigs, well, promising, but after four albums, the ruthlessness of
Well,
record
no,
companies,
6 albums. They've done 6 albums now,
six
Charles.
albums.
Six. Yeah.
Okay. So the ruthlessness of record companies, and usually they'd be demanding hits by the second or
Well,
third at the
no,
latest.
they're on a small indie label now. They're no longer on
Very
4AD, so
sensible on that part.
their lack of chart success has eventually caught up with them.
Graham, I feel it's time for an interruption.
Bradford's getting going, since the City of Culture last year, which started off completely
Mm,
underwhelmingly, then got better and better.
yeah.
You've got the Bradford Literature Festival, which starts in a week's time. You've
Hmm.
also got the new venue, Bradford Live, which has got loads of big shows coming up. They've got
Yeah.
OMD,
Yeah.
Hawkwind, Michael Ball. Well, maybe Michael Ball's not quite 6 round. The Proclaimers. They've got loads of things coming up.
Mm. Yeah,
So Bradford is
orchestral maneuvers
actually
in the dark.
reviving.
They're doing. So what's happening is that because the York date sold out. This is the live at York Museum Gardens that they're playing on
Mm,
July 9, I think it is, and because that
yeah.
sold out so quickly, they thought,
Mm,
right, let's try and find somewhere else to play. And obviously, new venues to
yeah.
them, Bradford Live, and they thought, let's go there. So, and it
Well,
will be not a completely different set, but obviously you can play longer for a start when you're indoors. Whereas obviously if you're playing when
it'll be greatest hits,
you've
won't
got
it? At
you've got other
York.
acts on
Yeah,
Heaven
yeah,
Sixteen
yeah.
are playing and China Crisis,
Well,
so you can only play for
yeah.
a certain length live in the museum gardens because of the 10:30 curfew. So there's an interview that I've done with him that'll be going in the York Press on Friday and on the website.
Well, OMD.
Yeah,
That's good. It's
with
good.
Andy McCluskey. Yeah.
Well,
So
I saw them live on their Architecture Morality tour in Edinburgh
yes.
about 1982. And that was amazing because that's a brilliant album. It's quite
Yeah.
arty, and they were truly superb. They were
Well,
simultaneously very poppy but very
yeah.
weird at the same time.
Well, now he revealed that the new album that he's working on is essentially an instrumental album, a mood album,
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
and so it's a new venture. But they always had, as he pointed out, actually on each album there was always an instrumental track and mood pieces, if you like. So this will be a
Mm.
complete album of that. That's the latest thing that
Ah,
they're working on at the moment. So that'll be the next
excellent.
next thing up from the band. So,
Yeah.
Graham, was a welcome interruption. Now, you recent new book roundup. So, what have you been reading that's been disturbing you?
Well, I've talked about the alienation effect, how Central European emigres transformed the British 20th century by Owen Hathaway on Alan Lane. I've
Yeah.
talked about John and Paul, A Love Story in Songs by Ian
Yes.
Leslie, which is on Faber and Faber. I haven't actually read a book which I got at Christmas, and wait for this one. It's by Douglas Beattie. It's on Eliot and Thompson. The book is called, and this is why I'm laughing. The book is called How Labour Wins. And so I was toying with the idea now that Stammer's gone and Burnham's not quite arrived, of not bother reading it because it might just be about how Labour loses.
Well, that would be a case of Burnham down, of course.
Oh, exactly. But the book that I've just finished, which is a brilliant, brilliant book,
Mm.
The Revolutionists, the story of extremists who hijacked the 1970s by Jason Burke, who's been the international security correspondent for The Guardian for decades.
International
And it's
security.
published
What a
by,
great title. What a great
yeah,
title.
yeah, yeah. It's published by Bodley Head. And the book is fantastic. It's all about 70s terrorists in the West and in our world. And it eventually ends up in the early 80s, where you got the rise of Islamist extremists who totally changed the terrorism game to make it even worse than it was in the 1970s. So it's an absolutely riveting book. It's written like a thriller. It's got rich details, like he was actually in the room the whole time with all these terrorists and political leaders across the Western world and across the Arab world. It's just a fantastic book.
And which revolutionists are most prominent in this book?
Well, West, you've got like obviously the Red Brigades
Yeah.
in Italy. You've got the RAF and the Baader-Meinhof gang in Germany.
Yes.
You've got some Japanese terrorists, bit of French terrorism, but they're all linked to countries supporting them. It turns out that the terrorists, if they worked on their own independently, would have had no money and no safety. And it was already a risky job being a terrorist.
Mm.
So they were always sponsored by different nations. Usually they were sponsored by Arab nations, different ones, because in the 60s and 70s, part of the whole movement towards left-wing ideas across the West and the Arab world was to try and get Palestine as a state
Mm.
created, and with a
Mm.
lot of anti-Israeli feeling across the West amongst left-wingers. So all these Western left-wing groups of young intellectuals and middle-class people from Germany, Italy, and France would be sponsored by different Arab nations, given money, given safe houses, given fake passports. The trouble with that was that each Arab nation had its own viewpoint on what left-wing ideas were. Each Arab nation had its own viewpoint on its relationship with America and its relationship with Russia and its relationship with Israel. And not only did all have different ideas about that, they constantly flip flopped. So one year you have a good relationship, next year you have a bad relationship. So it's not to like make terrorists heroes because the book doesn't, but it was a precarious existence the whole time.
Mm.
And because it was so precarious, they were treated like rock stars, not only just by left wing movements that were respectable in the West and by Arab governments, but also by magazines like, totally mainstream Western magazines would interview terrorists like they were rock stars. And that's because it wasn't just the fact that there was more left wing ideas going around the West at that point, it's because they were the underdogs. So, for example, this shows you how underdog the Arab cause was at the
Mm.
time. In 1970, the head of Fatah and the PLO, Yasser Arafat, was going to Cairo and Egypt for talks. Because he had to cross Jordan and the Jordan government hated him, he had to go to Cairo disguised as a Kuwaiti sheikh. Now, if you weren't the underdog in the whole war, you you wouldn't have to do that. So
No.
there was a great deal of sort of underlying sympathy. Like Jean Paul Sartre went to see Badr in a German prison to chat about politics philosophy.
Mm.
The French government was basically anti-Israeli and pro-Arab for most of the 70s.
Mm.
When a member of the German Red Army faction, Holger Mainz, died in prison in Stamheim in the mid 70s, 5,000 people turned up at his funeral. 5,000 people for a terrorist in democratic Germany. So times were different, and that all ended when the West got better at dealing with left wing terrorism, when the Vietnam War finished,
Mm.
and when the left wing cause ran out of steam with the general public. And that was replaced by the rise of Islamist terrorism, which turned out to be even more deadly and even more horrible than left wing terrorism had been.
Where does it leave the modern world with Hezbollah, for example?
Well, the problem is that the Israeli government is always, if you read the book, like the way that Israeli government's behaved in Gaza and the West Bank and Lebanon right
Is
now
nothing new.
is part of a long term pattern. The
Yeah.
Israelis have always, from the very beginning, dealt with enemies and threats in a very brutal, hard, unrelenting, almost disproportionate, unfair fashion from the very beginning. It's just what they do because they're in a precarious situation. They're surrounded by nations that don't really want them to exist. So the
Mm.
reaction to every problem has always been quite extreme violence. But that was met, thanks to the rise of Khomeini and Islamism
Yeah.
in the Arab world, with a force that was even more violent than Israelis. So countries like Iran and Iraq all became more and more extreme in terms of their religion
Mm.
and more dictatorial and more violent. So the whole thing was a mess 40 years ago. It's not really a bigger mess now than it was 40 years ago. And that's
It's
what the book by
yeah.
Jason Burke shows.
It, is it on a bigger scale now, though? More targeted, if
Uh,
you like?
I think there's been more deaths recently
Yeah.
in the conflict between Israel and
Mm.
the Arab cause. But in the scheme of things, it's a matter of degrees rather than
Yes.
anything
Yeah.
radically different.
Well, that's an interesting book indeed, Graham. And we look forward to the book about the arts revolutionists of our time as well, which is the counterculture that's equally important to all that.
Well, the counterculture was the bedrock of left wing thinking. It created the general philosophy of why you'd go left wing, and it started in the 40s and then moved into the 50s and then flowered in the 60s and 70s.
Mhm. Mm.
and then started to wither and die in the 1980s.
So, Graham, I went to an exhibition launch, the summer season at the Castle Museum in York. The central question of which was more significant, uh, the flower power of the 1960s or
Mm.
the Victorians in terms of the kind of events that they put on. And I guess if you were
Mm.
looking for a stereotype image of Victoriana, it would be um, piano legs covered up because they apparently look like human legs. And
Mm.
you'd think of dark clothing, and you'd think of Victoria not being mused by anything at all. And yet, this new exhibition, because you've got a 60s section of the Castle Museum, but you've also
Mm.
got the the street that was most important there that John Lamplugh Kirk set up. And often we see that particular street being set up for the snowy season of winter, but now it's got its own kind of floral displays. And part of the history that's being told is an event that I'd never heard of, the
Mm.
Grand Yorkshire Gala. And this was held
Mm.
from about 1859 for onwards of 60 years.
Wait a minute.
With
You're telling me that something important that happened in the Victorian era in the North has been forgotten about? Oh, that's never happened before.
Well, I mean, I do feel, considering I've been writing about York since 1988, and I'm thinking,
Mm.
why on earth I don't even know about this event at all.
Mm.
So it used to combine hot air ballooning with floral displays, with juggling, with performances, and people came from all over the country to this event. And I just think,
Yeah.
well, how's this slipped away from history in York? Why is this story not being told? But is
Because
it
the story
interesting?
of Britain is written by Southern-centric Oxbridge
Yeah,
Bridge graduates in general.
yeah.
Not wholly, but in general.
And I mean, the point that Carla, who was running the exhibition, was making was that, this is not a typical image at all of the Victorian era. And yet, actually, this was the more truthful representation of what they did in that time. And it wasn't deliberately
Mm.
contrasting it with the 1960s. It's just straight away, we think of flower power and the image that's presented in the 60s section of the Castle Museum. Is exactly that. They've actually added displays of flowers and big daisies and
Yeah. Well, I think the problem with the flower power movement, as it's been portrayed in history, is that below the surface of the jollity and the sticking a flower in the barrel of a gun
mm,
and the taking drugs and free love, there was a lot of political and cultural and social and sexual change
yep.
that happened because of flower power. But most historians have no interest in telling that story. They don't want to say flower power was good because that's to back up vaguely leftist center ideas. And because Britain's dominated by right wing ideas, they've never wanted to push that.
No.
But I would say the Victorian era was an absolute ferment of new ideas
Yeah.
and change, all of
Industrial
which
Revolution, Graham.
all of which drifted towards the left. I mean, Marx and Engels both lived in Britain
Yeah.
for a while.
Yes.
London was full of blooming, extremists and terrorists and
Mm,
left wingers in hiding
mm,
and
mm.
refugees from right wing dictatorships across Europe. There was the writing and the painting was liberating from right wing thinking. So even though Victoria seems very straight laced, it was a era of upheaval,
Yeah.
and the general drift was away from right wing ideas rather than towards them.
Even the Railway Children has that kind of story in it because it's the Russian writer who turns up in this country, having had to escape there, and was one of the great thinkers of his time. And that's just I know that's a story from a novel and of course a play, but I'm just using that as an example. Actually, I mean, I think that was one of the reasons that this character was in it was to show the power of dissident thinking. So that's just one
Mm-hmm.
example of that. So
So was
Graham,
the exhibition good? Is it worth a visit, Charles?
I always enjoy going to the Castle Museum, and
Mm.
we've got the prisons area to go through. It's so. I mean, and it's a consistently consistent kind of experience there.
Yeah.
Um,
Would you say it was consistent, Charles?
what I'm saying is, I always enjoy going.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's ever quite the height of excitement. You know what I mean? It's
Mm.
it's just consistently good.
Yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't like having Hockney's A Bigger Picture, for example, at York Art Gallery. But it does its job very well. It tells.
It hasn't got pizzazz. It's very steady Eddie.
I think it's steady Eddie, but I don't actually think there's a problem with that because I do
Mm.
think it's good on its educational side, very very strong on that. It's also got fantastic artifacts within it, and
Mm.
and it is always looking to freshen up what is in there as well. So
Yeah.
while I've been to more exciting exhibitions in my life, I still think it's a place, as I use that word again, of consistent quality.
But you've also been to a couple of gigs by bands
Yeah,
that are
so
sort of pop.
I've been to a
Elvis
couple of.
Costello and Belle and Sebastian, haven't you?
Yeah, and the link between these two is that they're both retro gigs in that Elvis Costello's he played with the Imposters, which still includes Pete Thomas from and Steve Naive from the Attractions, Dave
Is that
Farraher,
York Barbican?
yeah, and also
Yeah.
Charlie Sexton from America, who in his time was a cool dude as a teenager and still looks like David Bowie and is still very
Mm.
skin and bones and stylish. And Costello's called the tour Radio Soul, the early songs of
Mm.
Elvis Costello. So he was focusing on 1977
Mm.
or
Mm.
76 if you, but 77 when My Aim Is True came out, through to the two albums that came out in 1986. So Blood and Chocolate being the second of those, King of America the first.
Yeah.
The concert by Belle and Sebastian, they've been doing a tour in which they've focused either on Tiger Milk, the debut
Oh yeah.
EP or LP that was made while they were at
LP.
college for virtually no money at all, famously so,
Mm.
done as a college
Mm.
project, or the second album, which is If You're Feeling Sinister.
Sinister. Yeah.
And that's the one that they focused on at the Peace Hall at Halifax.
Yeah.
Now,
That's probably got better songs, but there's an innocence and freshness about Tiger Milk that If You're Feeling Sinister hasn't quite got.
I would accept that, but I still think there's a beauty about If You're Feeling
Mm.
Sinister. So we're looking at here at maybe I still think Belle and Sebastian are slightly underappreciated. They're still to some extent a cult band, but it sounds nonsense to say that because the gig sold out. So it's a
Yeah.
pretty big cult.
Also, also, they've done so many albums and they've done so many very good songs on so many
Yeah,
albums.
yeah,
If you were to do a box set in the future, if they still do box sets,
mm,
it's going to be quite a hefty thing because they've done a lot
absolutely,
of good songs. A lot.
absolutely. And of course, you could say the same with Costello, but I think the consistency of Bell and Sebastian, actually think that they've got better and better as the years have gone by, and I think it's hard to argue that Elvis Costello's earlier songs were not his best songs. Yes, he's gone on
I
to
think
work
the
with
problem is that
McCartney. Go
Elvis
on.
Costello's first 10 years from 76 to 86,
Hmm.
there's not a single bad album. And he
No,
did about 10 albums.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he kept on changing the style. And even the less good albums are still really good albums. He was just a man on fire. Everything he touched turned to brilliance. He was just phenomenal. And there's no way he could have kept that up. And he never has. Since then, he's like dipped in and out of every genre going. And he's done the occasional good or very good song and nothing dreadful. But
No.
he can't seem to get back to those peak days,
Well,
really.
I think that I mean it's a melody is the most difficult thing to sustain melody,
Mm,
and I
mm,
think Bell and Sebastian, I think Stuart Murdoch has done that. And Costello
mm.
has tended to experiment beyond melody.
That's
And
true.
so the live show. If Costello first played York Barbican in 1994 with the Attractions, and I remember reviewing that and complaining about the noise. The sound system was appalling.
Mm.
The story goes that the management say, look, don't try and play over loud here. And the story goes that his sound team ignored that and just did what they wanted. That was in 1994.
I thought we'd seen him on the Brutal Youth tour at Newcastle City Hall the
Yeah,
same year.
that would well
When
be
I
true.
thought that he messed around with these old songs too much to
Yeah.
the point where I got a bit irritated.
And so with this, he's doing pretty much that as well. It's not as extreme as Bob Dylan, but there genuinely were moments at first when you'd be hearing a song going,
Mm.
I'm not sure which song this is. And I don't want him to
God.
get to that. I do not want to get to that Bob Dylan
Well,
stage of not being able to recognize songs. I don't get why. And I don't really get it with Bob Dylan, but he's so notorious for it. But with Elvis Costello,
Yeah.
there was a restlessness that I liked about it. But the sound system meant he's 71 now, and that the voice was never the world's most pretty instrument. We know that.
Do you reckon that he turned the volume up too much again? Just
Yes,
a tribute to
100%.
1994. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know whether it was just because you remember what happened in '94, but it's interesting that the Royal Albert Hall reviews all went on about too loud, too muddy, the sound, just too muddy,
Well,
and
well,
you couldn't therefore hear
yeah.
the vocals enough until
I
he
last saw him
played
live
piano.
about 15. I last saw
Yeah,
him live about 15 years ago at Harrogate National Centre when he was doing a sort of nostalgia-based tour with
that's
some
right.
more recent tracks. And
Yeah,
I think it was only him and one other person. And he
yeah,
had like a
Probably Steve
50s,
Nye. Yeah,
50s TV set.
yeah,
And he was
I remember that
phenomenal
one.
because
Yeah,
he treated all the songs not only in the way that he'd record them, but
mm,
with real bite the whole time. He was really committed to every song he played. And I thought, God, you're about as good as you were when I saw you first in the 1980s at Edinburgh Playhouse.
that
So I
sense of
suspect that
commitment.
he's gone back to like try to ruffle some feathers by
Yeah,
being a bit
yeah.
sort of like rebellious.
The sense of commitment was absolutely there to each song. He really
Mm,
went for it with each song. But I just think if you're that experienced as a musician, how can you be satisfied with a muddy sound which ruins songs?
mm,
I can't fathom with all the technology that's now there available. One of the things
mm.
that Andy McCluskey was saying, and I know obviously OMD, it's electronic and whatever, but actually
They were
now
from analog days.
they
Yeah.
are.
Mm,
But the sound now is so sophisticated
mm.
on every song that it can be perfection. Now, I don't think Costello has ever wanted perfection, but there is a level of imperfection that becomes I can't cope with this bloody song being so loud, and I can't really hear what he's saying.
It may also be that because Dylan likes to slightly annoy fans, he doesn't like complacent fans who just want greatest hits. Perhaps Costello has an element of winding people up a little bit still. Could be
I,
that.
that could be true, but just to wind up with sound as opposed to what you're choosing to play. I mean,
Mm.
it was. I mean, I sent you the
Anyway,
set
we're about
list.
to run out of time, Charles.
Oh, sorry.
Did you
Okay.
enjoy Belle and Sebastian gig more
Now,
than the Elvis
here's the
Costello gig?
contrast. Here's the
Mm,
contrast.
mm,
So it's outdoors, which may well help, but the sound was absolutely superb throughout. There were a nine-piece lineup, as they often are these days, and you
mm.
had any number of different instruments within it. I mean, you had strings, of course. You had a brass musician, all the different guitars. Stuart Murdoch switching between keyboards and guitar. And so they played the album in full, preceded actually by the woman who was on the front cover of the album doing a talk about doing that, set in
Uh,
red like the album sleeve was. So all those kind of
yeah.
details were wonderful. It had projections behind every song that were really clearly thought out. As ever with Stuart Murdoch, he's a delightful man to listen to and talk to.
Well, he's become a frontman because when I first saw
Absolutely,
them, he was just like a
yeah,
normal bloke who happened to
yeah.
be at the front of the
Well, he's
stage.
a
Now
proper
he's like a
front.
performer.
He's a proper frontman now. I thought it
Mm,
was, and they finished off with a selection of more recent songs, or songs from the career, and of course
yeah.
they did still, have the tradition of some fans being allowed on stage to dance.
Yeah.
So that was controlled. It was just a
Mm.
group of sort of young fans that were allowed up by the security guards or whatever. So, but it still went ahead, and it was
It
a
was it,
beautiful night.
it was like polite anarchy. Belle and
That's
Sebastian
it.
are always polite.
Polite anarchy, because he was even polite about Keir Starmer to some extent, just sort of
Yeah.
noticing how he'd failed as a dull man, basically, and then he also talked about we need to love each other. That was, and I put that in very simplistic terms, but he
Well,
was
it's
trying to
yeah.
get that
You
essence
should
of
go and
life.
try and do that in Pontefract or parts of Essex to see what happens.
Might not go down so well down there, obviously, Graham, but I would point
Mm.
out it was in Halifax. I mean, that's
Well, yeah, Halifax has come
that's not.
on leaps and bounds, but
Well, I
it's
mean,
still got a lot of poverty
I
in it.
think it was,
Yeah.
I think it was voted once in the Sunday Times place to live, wasn't it? In Yorkshire,
Mm-mm.
Skipton's
Yeah,
had
yeah.
its turn as that as well. But it also kind of last thing to say about the gig because the time's running out.
Mm.
Just want to say how brilliantly organised it was. Cuff and Taylor run gigs there as they do at Scarborough as well at the Open Air
Mm.
Theatre. Really, really well. Fantastically helpful staff throughout. Always positive. Just a delightful atmosphere for concerts. It's a magical place to go and play. They've got
Yeah, the
41
Peace Hall.
concerts, 41 concerts this year that they're running.
Yeah, the
And
Peace
it is
Hall's an
really
amazing
high
place. They've
quality.
done
It's
such a good job.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.